The twin suns of Voron 5 were setting, painting the sky in orange and violet fire. The planet was quiet, peaceful. Too peaceful for a man used to noise and war. Ethan Cole, a human explorer from Earth, sat near the wreck of his shuttle, rubbing his tired eyes. It had been 3 days since the crash. No signal, no rescue, no human voice. Only the whisper of wind through silver grass and the faint sound of alien insects. He built a small fire with broken ship parts and dry vines. The smell of smoke rose into the still air. Ethan pulled out the only food he had left, a small packet of dried chicken from his emergency kit. His stomach growled. He smiled weakly, whispering to himself, "Dinner time, old friend." He tore the wrapper, dropped the meat into a small pan, and let it sizzle above the flames. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air. It reminded him of home, of Earth's forests, of family dinners long gone. But Ethan didn't know someone was watching him from the shadows. Among the trees, hidden between glowing ferns, stood Lyra, a young alien from the nearby village. Her eyes were large and silver, reflecting the firelight like pools of glass. She had followed the humans since morning, curious and afraid. Her people had seen the sky fall, the burning ship tearing through the clouds, and the elders had warned everyone to stay away. But curiosity was stronger than fear, so Lyra came alone. Now, as she watched the strange creature by the fire, her heart pounded. The human's skin was pale, his movements slow but steady. He didn't have fangs or claws. Yet when he picked up the cooked meat and bit into it, Lyra froze. The soft tearing sound made her flinch. Her kind never ate flesh, not even animals. On Voron 5, all life shared the same spirit. To eat another being was to steal its soul. Lyra gasped silently, her hands shaking. The fire crackled louder, and Ethan looked up for a moment. His blue eyes scanned the forest, sensing something. Lyra ducked quickly behind a glowing tree. Her tail brushed the leaves, making them rustle. Ethan stood cautious. "Who's there?" he called out. His voice echoed through the trees. Lyra covered her mouth, her breathing fast. The human walked toward the sound, flashlight in hand. The beam of light cut through the darkness, landing just a few feet from where she hid. She could see his boots, the strange cloth covering his body, the metal weapon at his side. He looked dangerous, but also lost. His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. After a few seconds, Ethan sighed and turned back to his fire. "Probably just an animal," he muttered. He sat down again, biting another piece of chicken. The soft glow of the fire made his face look calm, almost gentle. But to Lyra, it was the face of a monster who ate living things. A sudden twig cracked under her foot. Ethan spun around instantly, pointing his flashlight. The light hit her eyes and she screamed, a high, terrified sound that echoed across the forest. Ethan stumbled back, shocked. "Whoa, hey, it's okay!" he shouted, raising his hands to show he wasn't going to harm her. But Lyra didn't understand the words. To her, the movement looked like a threat. She screamed again, stumbled back and hid behind a large rock, trembling. "Don't eat me too," she cried in her own language, her voice breaking. Ethan froze. He didn't know what she said, but the fear in her tone was clear. No, I won't hurt you," he said softly, lowering his hands. But his words were useless, just strange sounds to her ears. Lyra peeked from behind the rock. She saw the fire, the smoke, the remains of the meat, and the sharp bone in his hand. Her eyes widened in horror. She thought it was proof that he had killed and eaten something alive. Tears formed in her eyes. She turned and ran into the forest, her feet barely touching the ground. Ethan tried to follow, but she vanished into the darkness like a shadow. "Great," he muttered. "Scared the local wildlife. Nice job, Cole." He looked around the trees, listening, but there was only silence now. He sat back down, frustration rising in his chest. He didn't want trouble. He only wanted to survive. In the forest, Lyra ran until her legs burned. She stopped near the edge of her village, gasping for air. The guards saw her and rushed over. "Lyra, what happened?" one asked. But she couldn't answer at first. She looked back toward the forest, still seeing the fire in her mind. Finally, she whispered, voice shaking, "The creature from the sky, it eats souls." The guards looked at each other, fear spreading across their faces. "Are you sure?" one asked. Lyra nodded, her eyes wide. "I saw it with my own eyes. It cooked and tore the flesh of a creature. I heard it chew. That night the elders gathered to talk. Fires burned bright in the alien village, and the air was heavy with worry. Far away, alone at his campfire, Ethan sat staring at the stars. He had no idea that his simple meal had already started a storm of fear that could change the future of two species. The twin suns of Voron 5 disappeared behind the horizon, and darkness swallowed the forest. The night was silent, except for the faint sound of wind, and the quiet heartbeat of two worlds about to collide. Morning arrived slowly on Voron 5. The mist floated above the silver grass, and the twin suns were still weak, painting the world in pale gold. Deep inside the alien forest, Lyra sat with her knees to her chest, trying to stop her hands from shaking. She could still see it. The human's fire, the smell of burned meat, the glint of bone between his fingers. Her heart wouldn't calm down. Her people lived in small woven huts made of light wood and crystal threads. The village was awake now. Hunters prepared their energy bows. Children carried water, and elders whispered near the sacred tree. When Lyra entered the circle, the chatter stopped. All eyes turned to her. The young one who had seen the creature from the sky, Elder Shan, old and gray-skinned, leaned on his staff. "Speak, child. What did you witness?" Lyra's voice was soft at first. "The outsider? The one from the burning sky, he was near the forest fire pit. He took the flesh of some creature, burned it, and then he ate it." A horrified gasp ran through the crowd. One of the hunters spat on the ground. "He eats souls," he growled. Lyra nodded. He looked human, but his eyes, cold like winter water. "When he saw me, I screamed. He moved toward me with fire in his hand." The elder closed his eyes, the lines on his face deepening. "The prophecy," he whispered. "The fire eater from beyond the stars." A heavy silence followed. Everyone knew the old tale. The one that said a stranger would fall from the heavens bringing either destruction or salvation. Most never believed it. Until now. Meanwhile, miles away, Ethan Cole stood near his broken shuttle, working to fix the damaged beacon. The small machine sparked weakly, giving a faint blinking light. He sighed. "Come on, don't die on me now." The circuit fried again. No signal. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked around. The forest was beautiful, yet uneasy. The air felt alive, almost watching him. He had spent enough time on alien worlds to know when locals were restless. "Someone's out there," he murmured. Last night's encounter stayed in his mind. That alien girl, her eyes, her fear, it wasn't simple curiosity. It was terror. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet she looked at him like he was a monster. Ethan decided to try something different. He gathered some supplies from his wreck. A few shiny metal bolts, a broken watch, and a half-empty fruit pack from the emergency kit. He placed them near the forest edge, arranging them neatly on a rock. "Peace offering," he said quietly. "Let's see if you understand kindness." He backed away, keeping his distance. For hours, nothing happened. Then as the twin suns began to climb higher, he returned to check. The objects were gone. Only one thing remained, a strange symbol carved into the dirt. 3 circles joined by lines glowing faintly blue. Ethan crouched, tracing it with his finger. "A message?" he whispered. "Or a warning?" He didn't know that far inside the forest, Lyra had come back to see him from afar again, still scared but drawn by curiosity. She had taken the metal pieces to show the elders. Some believed they were weapons, others thought they were gifts. But the mark she left behind was her idea, a sign of watching, not peace. That night the air grew colder. Strange howls echoed from the deep jungle. Ethan sat by his campfire again, unable to sleep. "They're watching me," he thought. His training told him to keep calm, but isolation was making his nerves thin. Every rustle sounded like footsteps. Every shadow seemed alive. He looked at the symbol again, half buried in the dirt. "You think I'm dangerous," he whispered. "But you don't even know what danger looks like." Back in the village, the council gathered again. The warriors were restless. They wanted to hunt the outsider before he brought more fire. Elder Shan raised his hand. "No blood yet. We must watch him longer. Fear can lie." Lyra stood by the firelight, her mind torn. She had seen him eat meat, but he didn't chase her. He looked confused, not cruel. Maybe he didn't know what his act meant. She remembered his voice, soft like water flowing over stones. Could a monster sound gentle? As she thought, one of the warriors, Ral, slammed his spear to the ground. "Elder, if this creature is allowed to live, he will bring others. He must be driven away." Shan looked at him calmly. "And if he is not a threat?"
"If he is simply lost?"
Ral sneered. "Then he will learn to fear us first." The elders murmured among themselves, uncertain. The tension thickened like fog. Lyra's heart pounded as she realized that soon they would go after the human. That night, while the village slept, she walked quietly through the forest. The stars shimmered above, silver against the black sky. She reached the human's camp again and hid behind a glowing tree. Ethan was asleep beside the dying fire, his face peaceful. The machine beside him blinked weakly, casting soft light over his features. Lyra watched him for a long time. The rise and fall of his chest, the quiet rhythm of breathing. He didn't look like a monster now. He looked fragile, alone and tired. For a moment she almost stepped closer. Then she heard a branch snap behind her, a soft but clear sound. She turned. From the shadows, glowing eyes stared back. It was not Ethan, it was something else, and it was hunting. Lyra froze. The glowing eyes in the dark were not human. They belonged to something wild, something from the deep forest that even her people feared. The creature's body shimmered like liquid glass, its shape bending and changing with the shadows. It let out a low growl, a sound that made the air itself vibrate. Before she could move, a hand grabbed her arm. She gasped, but it wasn't the monster. It was Ral, one of the alien warriors. 3 others were behind him, their energy weapons pulsing faint blue. "Lyra," Ral hissed. "What are you doing here? Are you spying for that thing?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I just wanted to see him." "He isn't what you think. Quiet," Ral snapped. "The elders talk, they fear. But we act." He raised his weapon, eyes locked on the sleeping human in the distance. "We strike before he strikes us." Lyra's stomach turned cold. She looked at Ethan, still asleep, unaware of the danger around him. The alien creature in the dark slithered away, sensing the armed warriors. But Ral didn't care about it. His attention was fixed on Ethan's campfire. "Ral, wait," Lyra whispered urgently. "He saved no one. He harmed no one. You don't even know what he wants. He eats flesh." Ral's voice was sharp. "What else do monsters want?" He lifted his weapon. The hum grew louder. A shot of energy flashed toward the camp. Lyra screamed, knocking his arm aside just in time. The blast hit a nearby rock, exploding into sparks. Ethan jolted awake, instinctively rolling to the ground and pulling his blaster from his belt. "What the—" He fired blindly into the trees, light beams cutting through the night. The forest erupted in chaos. Energy bolts streaked through the air. Ethan ducked behind a metal crate from his wreck, returning fire without knowing who attacked. The crack of energy against metal echoed across the valley. Lyra dropped to the ground, covering her head. "Stop!" she cried.
"Stop fighting!"
But no one listened. Ral shouted to his warriors, "Keep him down. Don't let him reach the fire." Ethan's pulse raced. His training took over. Stay low, stay calm, return only if targeted. "Hostiles. 3, maybe 4, he muttered, eyes scanning the tree line. He didn't want to kill anyone, but he had no idea what was coming for him. He spotted movement, someone crawling through the grass toward him. He aimed his weapon, finger trembling. But then he saw her face, the same alien girl from before. Her eyes were full of fear, not hate. "Wait," Ethan said quietly, lowering his blaster. "It's you." Lyra pointed to the forest behind him. "Run!" she shouted in her own language, voice trembling. Ethan didn't understand the words, but her tone said everything. He grabbed his emergency pack and backed away slowly. Okay, I'm leaving," but Ral wasn't done. "No escape!" he roared, charging forward. He fired another energy bolt that hit the edge of Ethan's camp, setting the ground ablaze. The fire spread fast, licking at the dry vines and wrecked debris. Ethan shielded his face. "Damn it!" He turned and sprinted through the smoke, coughing hard. Lyra chased after him, waving frantically for him to follow a safe path. Behind them, the fire roared higher. Ral and his men retreated, the flames forcing them back. "He'll burn in his own fire," Ral spat. "Let the forest finish him." But Lyra wasn't so sure. She glanced once more toward the human's fading figure. Something inside her twisted, fear, guilt, and curiosity all tangled together. By dawn, the fire had died. Ash covered the ground and the air smelled of smoke and iron. Ethan sat near a stream, cleaning a cut on his arm. His shirt was torn, his face streaked with dirt. He stared into the water, seeing his reflection tremble with the ripples. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. First fear, now open attack. He took a deep breath. He had been in hostile territory before, but this felt different. It wasn't hate, it was misunderstanding. They thought he was something else, something terrible. Nearby, a shadow moved. Ethan grabbed his blaster, but it was her again. Lyra. She stepped into the light slowly, her hands raised to show she carried no weapon. He lowered his guard slightly, watching her every move. "You again?" he said softly. "Why are you following me?" Lyra couldn't understand his words, but she felt his tone. Tired, defensive. She pointed to his arm, then to the wound. Ethan blinked, realizing she was offering help. She tore a strip of cloth from her cloak and pressed it against the cut. He winced, then smiled faintly. "Thanks," he murmured. Lyra met his eyes, and for the first time she didn't look terrified, still cautious but curious. The firelight between them glowed soft and warm. Then a sound broke the silence, a distant war horn echoing through the forest. Lyra turned pale. She knew what it meant. Rael had returned with more warriors. She looked at Ethan, fear in her eyes, and whispered one word he couldn't understand, but he didn't need translation. "Run." The forest of Vorin 5 burned again that night, but this time not from battle, from the storm. Lightning cracked through the twin sun clouds, striking the silver trees and setting their crystal leaves ablaze. Wind howled through the valleys, carrying sparks and ash across the alien horizon. The rain came too late. Ethan, Cole, and Lyra ran through the glowing mist, their feet splashing through shallow pools. Behind them, orange flames rose higher, chasing the darkness away. Ethan's breath came heavy, his heart pounding. "This whole jungle's going up," he shouted, even though he knew she couldn't understand. Lyra turned her head, eyes wide with panic. The sacred forest was their life, their home. Now fire was devouring it. In her mind, this was the curse the elders had warned about. The sky creature who would bring fire upon their land. Yet when she looked at Ethan, she didn't see evil. She saw someone trying to survive. A fallen tree blocked their path. Ethan dropped his pack, gripping the burning trunk and forcing it aside. "Move," he yelled. Lyra hesitated, then crawled through the opening, the heat searing her pale skin. Ethan followed, coughing from the smoke. They reached a river, a long, twisting band of silver light. On the other side, the flames were spreading toward a small alien settlement. Lyra froze, recognizing the shapes of the huts. Her people were there, trapped. She looked at Ethan, desperate, and pointed across the river. "Home!" she cried, her voice cracking. Ethan followed her gaze, then saw them. Silhouettes moving, trying to escape as the fire grew closer. He understood enough. "They'll never make it through that," he said, glancing around for something, anything to help. A narrow wooden bridge crossed the river, half burned already. The ropes were weak, swaying under the heat. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "It's too late," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet." Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the bridge. The planks creaked beneath his boots, flames licking at the sides. The smoke stung his eyes, but he pushed forward. Lyra shouted something, reaching out to stop him, but he didn't slow down. Across the river, the alien villagers watched in shock. The firelight painted Ethan's figure like a shadow of flame and metal. To them, it looked like madness, the Soul Eater walking through fire. But Lyra knew. He wasn't attacking. He was saving them. Ethan reached the far side and waved for them to cross. "Come on, move," he yelled, pointing at the bridge. The aliens hesitated, fear freezing them. None of them understood his words, but they understood his gesture. One brave child stepped forward, then another. Ethan helped them across one by one. Each plank groaned under the weight, but he steadied them, guiding them with his hands. Lyra watched from the other side, her heart in her throat. Every moment felt like the last. A gust of wind blew through the flames, sending burning branches crashing down near the bridge. Ethan grabbed the last villager, a small boy, and carried him across. The bridge cracked, the rope snapping. He leaped, landing hard on the muddy shore beside Lyra. The bridge collapsed behind him, vanishing into the fire. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the sound of the burning forest filled the air. The villagers stared at the human, their expressions shifting, fear softening into awe. The Soul Eater had risked his life to save them. Lyra knelt beside Ethan, touching his burned arm. He smiled weakly, wincing from the pain. "Guess fire runs in the family," he murmured, half joking, half breathing. She didn't understand, but she could feel the warmth behind the words. The elders arrived soon after, their robes soaked from rain, faces full of confusion. Elder Sean stepped forward, his staff glowing faintly blue. He looked at the human, then at the bridge's ruins. "You crossed the fire," he said slowly, "and brought our children home." Lyra nodded quickly, her voice trembling. "He saved them, Elder. He did not burn the forest, and he fought it." Sean's eyes softened. Perhaps our fear blinded us." He turned to Ethan and placed a hand over his heart, the ancient gesture of peace among their kind. Ethan mirrored it, unsure but respectful. A murmur spread through the villagers. For the first time, no one called him Soul Eater. That night, the storm finally ended. The forest smoldered, the ground still warm underfoot. Ethan sat beside Lyra near the riverbank. The stars returned, bright and clean in the dark sky. She handed him a small fruit from her pouch, glowing softly, pulsing like a heartbeat. He accepted it carefully, took a bite, and smiled. Sweet, strange, and alive, like everything on this planet. Lyra watched, then smiled too. "Not all fire destroys," she said quietly in her own language. Ethan didn't know what she said, but somehow he understood the feeling. As the last embers of the bridge sank into the water, a new one had already begun, not of wood or rope, but of trust. And for the first time since he crashed on Voron 5, Ethan Cole didn't feel alone. The night after the storm was quiet, eerily quiet. Smoke drifted lazily above the forest, glowing faintly under the light of the twin moons. The fires had finally gone out, leaving behind charred trees and patches of silver ash. Yet in the middle of all that destruction, life still moved. Fireflies danced over the river, and the sound of alien frogs echoed softly between the broken branches. Ethan Cole sat beside the dying campfire, his arm wrapped in a strip of cloth that Lyra had tied for him. The burn throbbed, but the pain didn't matter. Across from him, Lyra watched silently, her wide eyes reflecting the orange glow. Around them stood a small circle of aliens from her village, the same ones who once feared him. No one spoke. They just looked at him, the man who had walked through flames. Finally, Elder Sean stepped forward. His old voice was heavy but calm. "Fire has two faces," he said. "It can destroy, or it can protect. Tonight the human showed us the second face." The villagers murmured among themselves, some still wary, others curious. For generations they had been taught that those who ate flesh were cursed. Yet this flesh-eater had risked his life to save their young. Lyra turned to Ethan, her tone gentle. "They want to understand," she said softly, even though he couldn't comprehend the words. She gestured to the crowd, then mimed the fire, the bridge, and her heart beating fast. Ethan watched her hands move and smiled faintly. He didn't need translation. Her meaning was clear enough. Sean lowered his staff and pointed to the small metal tin near the campfire. "Show us," he said. Ethan blinked, not sure what the elder meant. Lyra pointed to his cooking kit, the one that started all the misunderstanding. She nodded slowly. "Do it again," she whispered. He hesitated. The last time he cooked chicken, the entire forest thought he was summoning demons, but he could see the honesty in her eyes. They were asking, not accusing. So he took a deep breath, pulled out the remaining ration pack, and lit the fire again. As the flames rose, the aliens stepped back nervously. The scent of sizzling meat filled the air, mixing with the sweet aroma of the alien fruit Lyra offered. Ethan smiled gently and cooked both, chicken and fruit, side by side. He pointed at the meat, then at the sky, miming a flying bird. Then he lowered his hand, pressed it to his heart, and showed the motion of cooking. Not hunting, not killing. "Dead already," he tried to explain. "Not alive." The aliens tilted their heads, whispering to one another. Lyra translated in broken words. "He says the food. No spirit inside. Empty shell. No pain." The elder stared at the fire for a long time, then nodded slowly. "He eats what is already past. He does not steal life. He honors it." A quiet murmur spread through the villagers. Ethan passed a small piece of fruit toward Lyra. She accepted it hesitantly, then offered him a piece of glowing blue root from her pouch. They ate together, their eyes meeting through the firelight, and just like that, fear began to fade. Later that night, the villagers gathered in a circle around the flames. Children peeked out from behind their parents, staring at the strange human who smiled and shared stories through gestures. Lyra sat beside him, translating with her hands, her face lit with joy. For the first time, laughter broke the silence, soft at first, then growing louder as more joined in. Ethan couldn't understand their words, but he understood their tone. It was warmth, acceptance. When the feast ended, Sean stood once more. "The fire bridge has burned," he said, "but another bridge stands in its place. One built not of wood, but of courage." He turned to Lyra. "You saw the truth before any of us. You believed in him when we did not. That belief saved lives tonight." Lyra looked down shyly, her cheeks glowing faintly purple under the moonlight. Ethan smiled at her, sensing what was being said even without words. Then Sean approached him. The elder removed the glowing pendant from his neck, a small crystal that pulsed softly with light. He held it out to Ethan. "You carry the fire that gives, not takes. Accept this, fire-hearted one." Ethan didn't know what to say. He took the pendant with care, feeling its warmth in his palm. The crowd bowed their heads in respect. For the first time, they didn't see a monster or an invader. They saw a protector. When dawn arrived, golden light spilled across the valley. The forest still smoked, but life was already returning. Tiny sprouts of silver grass pushed through the ashes. Ethan stood on the edge of the village, ready to explore further for supplies. Lyra joined him, carrying a small bag of food. "Your people will come for you?" she asked hesitantly. Ethan looked at the sky. Endless, quiet, empty. "Maybe," he said softly. "Someday," she smiled faintly. "Then until they come, you are not alone." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time since his crash, he didn't feel like a stranger on this world. The fear, the fire, the misunderstanding, all of it had led to this fragile peace. He placed the glowing pendant around his neck and looked toward the horizon. The forest shimmered under the morning sun, scarred but alive. And in that light, the myth of the Soul Eater began to die, replaced by a new story whispered through the villages of Vorin 5. The story of the fire-hearted human, who came from the sky not to destroy but to protect. Morning came soft and golden over the recovering forest. The smell of wet ash hung in the air, mixed with the sweet scent of alien blossoms beginning to bloom again. Life on Vorin 5 was stubborn. Even after fire and fear, it always returned. Ethan Cole stood near the riverbank, where the last sparks of the previous night's campfire had cooled to gray dust. He watched the water flow over smooth stones, reflecting two suns rising side by side. Behind him, voices echoed, the people of Lyra's village moving about their mourning. This time they didn't whisper in fear. They greeted him with cautious smiles. Lyra approached, carrying a woven basket that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. "Food," she said, her voice careful but friendly. She set it on the ground and opened the lid. Inside were slices of glowing fruit, soft blue roots, and a kind of bread that smelled like sweet smoke. Ethan crouched down, smiling. "Breakfast?" he guessed. Lyra didn't understand the word, but she nodded anyway, pleased by the tone. He took a bite of the bread. It melted on his tongue, sweet and warm, like honey and ash. He looked at her with surprise. "That's good," he said, patting his stomach. Lyra laughed softly. "Good," she repeated, proud of the human word. The small group of aliens gathered around, watching curiously. Their fear had become fascination. Ethan noticed how they observed every move he made, how he held the food, how he ate slowly, how he smiled afterward. It wasn't just a meal. It was a lesson. He thought for a moment, then reached into his pack. He pulled out the last sealed pouch from his emergency rations, a preserved strip of cooked chicken. He hesitated. This was how it had all begun, with a misunderstanding, a fire, and a scream. But maybe now it could end differently. He held the pouch up for everyone to see. "This," he said gently, tapping it, "is food. Human food." Lyra's eyes followed his hand. "Fire food," she said quietly. Ethan chuckled. "Sort of, yeah." He tore the packet open and held it above the fire pit, reheating it gently. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air again, the same scent that once brought panic to these people. Now it drifted through calm morning air and no one ran. The aliens watched closely, whispering among themselves. Lyra leaned forward, curious but cautious. Ethan gestured for her to try. "It's okay," he said softly. "Safe," she looked uncertain. The old fear flickered behind her eyes. But she remembered the night of the fire, the bridge, the rescue, the laughter afterward. Slowly she reached out. Ethan tore a small piece and offered it on his open palm. Lyra hesitated, then took it. She brought the piece to her lips, sniffed it, and closed her eyes. The taste was strange, smoky, heavy, warm, but not wrong. Her body didn't burn, her spirit didn't fade. She opened her eyes wide with realization. "It does not steal life," she whispered in her own language. The villagers gasped. One of them asked a question quickly, and Lyra answered, her words flowing faster now. Ethan didn't understand, but he could see the change happening. In their faces, in their eyes. To prove her point, Lyra took another bite, then smiled. "Good," she said again, louder this time. Ethan laughed, relief flooding through him. "See, told you." Then something unexpected happened. The villagers began to bring their own food, fruits, roots, sweet nectar, and placed them near Ethan's fire. A silent offer of sharing. He accepted each gift with gratitude, roasting the fruit carefully, letting them taste the warm flavor. Some laughed at the strange texture. Others clapped when the fruit sizzled. The entire village had gathered now, turning what began as fear into celebration. Children ran between them, mimicking Ethan's gestures, pretending to cook. Lyra's eyes sparkled with joy as she realized what was unfolding. A connection made through fire, flavor, and trust. Elder Shan stepped forward, his old eyes filled with quiet wonder. "Once," he said to his people, "we feared the flame because it devoured, but the human teaches that fire can also give." He looked at Ethan and smiled. "He cooks not to destroy, but to share." Ethan didn't understand the words, but Lyra translated softly, her voice proud. He says, "You bring gift of warmth." Ethan looked around at the faces glowing in the firelight. For the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like part of something new, a bridge between worlds that once feared each other. The villagers began singing, a low, melodic hum that vibrated through the ground. Lyra joined in, her voice gentle and strong. Ethan listened, smiling, feeling a peace he hadn't known since leaving Earth. When the song ended, Lyra handed him a small carved figure made of crystal wood. It looked like a man holding fire in his hands. "For you," she said. "Fireheart." Ethan touched the carving, his throat tight. "Thank you," he said simply. Lyra smiled. "Good." That night, under the glowing moons of Voron 5, humans and aliens sat together around one fire. They ate, laughed, and shared the oldest language in the universe, food. And as the flames danced in their eyes, a story was being rewritten. The story of the man they once feared, now known as the fire-hearted human. The one who taught them that warmth and kindness could live inside the same flame. The moons of Voron 5 hung high and pale above the valley, silver light sliding across the river that once reflected only fire. Where ash once smothered the ground, new sprouts now pushed through, soft, glowing veins of green stretching toward the twin suns. The forest was healing, and so were its people. Ethan Cole stood on the hill above Lyra's village, the same place where fear had first found him. Now, laughter carried up from below, the sound of alien children playing by the river, the crackle of many small campfires. Each flame burned low and gentle, not in terror but in trust. It had been 3 weeks since the storm. In that short time, everything had changed. The humans' crashed shuttle had become a meeting place, half repaired and covered in woven fabric that shimmered like the villagers' robes. Ethan had shared his tools. The aliens had shared their songs. Together they had turned ruin into something alive. Lyra climbed the hill toward him, her crystal hair catching the moonlight. She carried 2 cups carved from river rock, each filled with glowing blue nectar. "For peace," she said in her careful, accented English. Ethan smiled, accepting one. "For peace," he echoed. They clinked the cups lightly. They drank in silence for a while, watching the twin moons rise higher. The quiet between them was comfortable now, not heavy with fear like before. Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. "Your people, they will come soon?" Ethan sighed, gazing at the stars. "The beacon's fixed. They'll find me, maybe in a few days." She nodded, though her smile faltered a little. "You will leave." He looked at her and hesitated. "Yeah, but not forever." He reached for the pendant Elder Shan had given him, the glowing crystal that pulsed with a faint warmth. "Part of me stays here," he said softly. "Right here." Lyra smiled again, a small, sad smile. "Then we remember." Down in the village, the people were gathering near the central fire. Shan's deep voice carried over the crowd. "Tonight we tell the story of the fire-hearted one," he announced, his tone both proud and reverent. so our children will not forget what fear once cost us and what courage returned to us. Ethan and Lyra descended the hill to join them. The elder motioned for the human to sit by the fire's edge. Flames danced, painting moving shadows across everyone's faces. Sean raised his staff. Once we trembled at the sight of the stranger from the sky, he began. We saw the fire in his hands and thought it would devour us. But it was not hunger that guided him. It was hope. He gestured to Ethan. He crossed the burning bridge when all others fled. He fed us warmth when we had only fear. He burned not to destroy, but to protect. The crowd murmured, their voices low and respectful. Some of the youngest touched their hearts, the new gesture of gratitude they had learned from him. Lyra translated softly beside him, her voice almost like music. Ethan listened, his chest tightening. He had been trained to explore, to survive, to adapt, not to become a legend. Yet here he was, surrounded by people who once saw him as death itself, now calling him savior. Sean's voice deepened. Let it be known, he said, that when the stars fall again, we will no longer fear them. For the fire-hearted human taught us this, that what we do not understand is not always meant to harm us. Sometimes it is meant to change us. A cheer rippled through the crowd, soft at first, then swelling like a wave. Children clapped their glowing hands, the light reflecting off the river. Music began. Gentle drums made from hollow vines, flutes carved from bone and crystal. Lyra stood and pulled Ethan to his feet. Dance, she said, laughing. It's what we do for heroes, he chuckled, embarrassed. I don't dance, she tilted her head. You didn't fly through fire either, she teased. Ethan laughed and gave in. He followed her slow rhythmic steps, guided by the drums and the stars. Around them the aliens sang in low harmony, their voices blending with the hum of the forest. For a brief, perfect moment, Ethan forgot that he didn't belong here. He simply existed, part of their rhythm, their story. When the celebration faded and the fires burned low, Ethan walked alone toward his ship. Lyra followed quietly, stopping a few steps behind. You go now? She asked. He nodded. If I stay longer, the rescue team might miss the signal. He looked back at her, the alien girl who had once screamed in fear at the sight of him, now standing close enough for him to see the reflection of the stars in her eyes. I'll miss this place, he admitted. Lyra smiled gently. Then you will come back, he laughed softly. You're certain of that? Yes, she said simply. Firehearts always return. He didn't know if it was a saying in her culture or just something she made up. But he hoped she was right. As the engines of his repaired shuttle began to hum, the villagers gathered one last time. They raised their glowing hands toward the sky. Lyra stepped forward and pressed her palm to her heart. When the ship lifted off, the light from its thrusters bathed the valley in gold. From above, Ethan looked down and saw hundreds of small fires flickering like stars across the ground. The fires they once feared, now symbols of hope. His voice crackled through the radio as he whispered into the darkness. Goodbye, Voron 5, and thank you. Far below, Lyra watched the trail of light fade into the heavens. She turned to her people and spoke softly, her words carrying across the night. The fire-hearted human has returned to the stars. But his flame lives here, one in us. And so the legend began. A story whispered beside every fire, told to every child who feared the unknown. The story of a man who fell from the sky, brought fire, and taught a world that warmth could conquer fear. The legend of Ethan Cole, the fire-hearted human, the one who came not to take life but to share its light.